Hey, Dana, so talk to us. What's one piece of advice you can give us this morning?
I would like to have dentists who are in a PPO environment be able to negotiate their insurance allowables. The ROI and the time that's spent doing this is exponential.
Interesting. So, real quick, if you can give us a little bit of a background of this is exactly what you do
Mhm.
specifically,
No,
negotiate?
yep,
Interesting. So, which specific PPOs have you successfully negotiated with?
all of them.
Nice.
So Delta Dental, United Concordia, and MetLife are usually the three big ones that people say don't negotiate. As a third party who does this, we don't. But as a practice, my brother's a dentist and I still do his insurance and help him out in his practice every week. So one of the things that we do is negotiate his contracts every 2 years. We've been doing that for over 20 years with him. The three that I just talked about, I will do it from the office. If you're listening and you are in a practice or going to join a practice and join some networks, always negotiate, even with those three. So lately, Delta has been negotiating, which is usually the biggest one that people say doesn't negotiate. So never say never. Always negotiate with every company you can.
Why do you think they're negotiating now?
Probably on the Delta side, my guess would be dentists are dropping them. Got local people here who are getting an influx of Delta patients because they're in Delta and other dentists around them are dropping Delta. So we actually had a rep come in and actually introduce themselves, which is unheard of for Delta. So I think some of the states are feeling it more than others as far as Delta losing dentists and needing to maintain the ones they have or gain dentists.
Yeah. Interesting. So you mentioned that with your brother's practice, you negotiate every 2 years.
Mhm.
Why every 2 years?
It's a marathon. So participation, when you participate with insurance companies, it's a game. I mean, you need to negotiate every 24 months. Now, there's exceptions. Connection Dental, GEHA, will negotiate every 12 months, and Guardian's going to lock in for 36. Most of the others will be every 2 years. So I have a dentist that calls us and says, I haven't negotiated for 14 years. That for me did let them know, hey, we're not going to get you 14 years of improvements. That's what most people think. Well, I've never negotiated before, so I'm going to get these great increases. And that's not how it works. You're getting 2 to 10% every 2 years, depending on how generous they are and what they've been allowed to do in certain states. That is an average. So if you add that up and you run the marathon and you do it every 2 years, that can be substantial. It's really important to be consistent and to run the marathon. It's not a sprint.
Interesting. So then walk me through that, the entire process from identifying a low reimbursement code to seeing the first increase. What are the exact steps?
First of all, I want to give you one of the things that I have my dentist do is how much does it cost you to do a procedure? So down to wiping the room down, the cavicide wipe, down to that. How much does it cost you to do a 2-surface filling? How much does it cost you to do a prophy? How much does it cost you to do a crown? Once you have those numbers, then participation becomes math. So a lot of dentists don't know, what does this procedure cost me to do? So include your assistant time, include your hygienist time, all admin time, everybody's time it takes to do the verification, to submit the claim. So you need to figure out, first of all, what do these procedures cost you to do? And then you'll get insurance. So let's say you're buying a practice, you're going to be joining a network. You can talk to colleagues, try to get a ballpark about what some of these cost to see when I see a 2392, is this a good allowable, right? Am I going to be able to be profitable in this? Because a New York dentist versus an Oklahoma dentist, the fees for that are going to be so drastically different that a lower fee schedule in Oklahoma probably wouldn't be such a bad thing. So you have to know what procedure codes cost. So if you're going to pick networks, you've got to know what it's going to cost you to do business. That's the first strategy. The second strategy when you're going to buy a location is to know what your office fees are going to be. So difference for startup versus existing, because if you have an existing practice and you're buying an existing practice, don't rock the boat too much, You're going to go in there and then you're going to up your office fees and drop this and participate there. It just depends on what your cash flow looks like to make sure, hey, can I rock the boat a little bit here or do I need to be steady Eddie, keep the patients coming in? So there's different strategies for that also. So setting your office fees. foundational, regardless if you're buying or you're negotiating 1 to 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, you have to fee balance your office fees every year. We buy Wasserman, the NDAS. There's several companies out there that sell you the percentiles for your zip code. So you can buy the NDAS, you can do Fair Consumer Health, there's SICA. There's several people out there that give you that information. Dental reps sometimes have that information. And the sweet spot's usually at about the 80th percentile. Let me tell you why. That's what insurances are selling to employers. So the 80th percentile. So let's talk about why that's so important. If you're out of network and you're submitting your office fees to the insurance company and they're paying your office fees, a lot of dentists are proud about that, right? I've submitted a $100 pro fee and I'm getting paid $100.
Yeah.
Well, for me, that's a red flag. I mean, how do you not know they're going to pay 105 or 110, right? I mean, to me, that means your fees are too low. So the 80th percentile is usually about the sweet spot for an out-of-network dentist to capture the dollars for the insurance's UCR. Now, there are some exceptions. Humana, they're very low paying. It wouldn't matter where you are. They're going to give you $12 for an exam on some plans. So setting your office fees at the 80th percentile is a strategy that we use for in-network dentists and out-of-network dentists. So doing it every year is super important, and upping your fees with that data and not percentages, because I'll get a lot of dentists that will be like, hey, I increased my fees by 6% last year. To me, it doesn't mean anything because I'm like, well, what is 6% of what? So when you purchase the data and you have that in front of you, and every year you put yourself, my specialists, you want to be in the 90th, 95th. Your GPs, you want to be between the 70th and the 80th. So if you set your office fees like that every single year, you set yourself up for success for negotiations. Insurance companies want to see a big write-off. Okay, dentists get hung up on that adjustment write-off, just get hung up on it because they're like, well, if I wasn't in network, I could be making this much, right? Zero is zero. Participating is so important in some markets to be able to stay competitive and keep your chairs full, because that's basically what it comes down to is cash flow and open chair time is usually is the reason why dentists will participate with plans.
Interesting. So many questions, but one of them you mentioned every year, right? We need to kind of do. I guess, what are the reasons some are not doing it every year?
Fear. A lot of times when we're working with dentists, they're in the 40th percentile and it's a big jump, right? So, and to be honest, most are below the 50th percentile when we're looking at office fees. I'm going to say 8 out of 10. Their fees are just entirely too low. Fear, the cash paying patients that are in, what are they going to say when it goes from 300 to 425? Not having a plan in place. So one of the strategies that we use with dentists who have that fear is to put a membership plan in place to help offset that cost so that patients who have been paying cash prices and then your cash prices go up, offer them, a membership plan or a loyalty plan to help offset the rising costs of, your office fees.
Wow. Okay, interesting. So fear. And then I noticed you mentioned, depending on the markets you wanted to participate, right?
Yep.
Can you explain to me the mindset of, okay, I want to be fee for service, but you're looking at the market and you're like, sweetie, fee for service ain't going to work in this market. Has that ever happened?
Sure. Every dentist's dream is to be fee for service. I don't think I've ever talked to a dentist that says, I just want to be a participating dentist. That's just what my goals are. They all want to be fee for service. We've coached a few practices going fee for service. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. We had to put them back into networks. Just the other day, a practice in Colorado dropped Delta last July, and we just put them back in network last month. I think what happens is dentists, we're all good. We're all great, and we all think we're the best. And we think that the patients are going to be loyal to us because we are the best. Unfortunately, when you have an insurance-driven patient, that's not necessarily the case. So with that practice that I'm just talking about, they found out that was the case. They've been in network with Delta for over 20 years and decided that it was time to drop. It was the only insurance contract that they were in network with, and they decided to drop, and a lot of their patients left. And to quote that dentist, it was like, I thought we were better than that. And I don't think it has anything to do with if you're good or not. I just think it comes from the mindset of the patient, and being in network to a patient overrides a lot to some patients.
Is there anything, because some people say, hey, up your marketing or word it this way or prepare your patients when you're dropping. Is there really anything, like honestly, where we can almost cover that and say, oh yeah, they are sticking on, or nope, it's just the way the human psychology works. They're going to be.
Oh, absolutely prepare. For sure, you can prepare your patient base. I would start a year before you're going to drop. Just start talking to them. Start talking to your patients in the chair. Have your hygienist get training for sure, and teach your team how to talk to the patient about what you're thinking about doing and getting some feedback from the patients. Absolutely. So you can always prepare for that. Let them know they're going to be getting a letter from the insurance company. On some cases, they're going to give other in-network dentists on the letter to the patient. I mean, they're going to say, hey, your doctor's dropped this, and here are 5 other dentists in your area that take Cigna. So I just did use Cigna as an example, but they're going to send letters to your patients. So prepare. Absolutely, there's ways you can try to combat that. And of course, marketing. Absolutely.
Interesting. Okay, so then going back to the negotiations, can you share with us pretty much a script or email language you use when negotiating?
Yeah. Foundational steps, if I can start there. So being in the 80th percentile and waiting 6 months. So don't start trying to negotiate until you've got your fees balanced, 70th to 80th percentile for 6 months. Then you can negotiate. Also, make sure you're always submitting your office fees to the insurance company. I still have a lot of dentists who will be submitting the allowables to the insurance company. We want the insurance seeing your fees for 6 months and your balance fees for 6 months. And then you want your most organized person in your practice doing this, because you want everything in an email. If you happen to talk to one of your reps, that's great. But whatever you talk about, reiterate it in an email, send that to your rep in an email. You want everything in writing. And the reason for that is miscommunication. So you'll say, well, I remember when we were talking on the phone this time that you told me my 2740 was going to be $1,100. If you don't have anything in writing, there's nothing you can do to back that up. So make sure you have everything that you're doing with your reps in an email. So I always email. I recommend emails versus calling anybody. Email your rep, and it's super simple. After you've fee balanced, you've been sending your fees for 6 months, I want you to ask your rep if you're eligible for a fee schedule review. It's not hard. It's not rocket science. Have doctors that try to want to butter them up. The cost of everything is going up. And I'm not trying to discourage you from pleading your case, but what you ultimately want to know is if you're eligible for a fee schedule review. And reps, sometimes their hands are tied. They could say, well, we're done with fee schedule reviews for 2025. Sorry. Okay. So if you get that answer, if you get no, you're not eligible, their next question is, when am I eligible?
Okay.
And then you'll make sure to put that in a calendar, on your phone, however you want to stay organized doing this so that you reach out when you are eligible for that fee schedule review. So a simple email. Thank you, Delta Dental. We love our participation status and we want to continue to participate. Are we eligible for a fee schedule review? Super simple. It's not hard.
Yeah. And then send it off.
So 3 things can happen, right? They can tell you you're not eligible. And then you can ask them when. They'll say, yes, you are eligible. Send us your top 25 codes that you'd like to negotiate. So have those ready to go. Sometimes they'll ask you for all of your office fees. Have those ready to go in an Excel format. So have a few things ready to go so that you can respond quickly to the insurance company. So they'll ask you for your office fees, or they'll ask you for your top 25, or they'll say, here's a new fee schedule for you. Okay. And doctors get super excited. Oh my gosh, I got new fees. This is great. Don't stop there. I would say, this is great. Thank you for the first offer. Is there anything else you can do? Is there more that you can give? Is this the best and final you can give our practice? Don't give up and don't stop until they say this is best and final. And that's the language you're looking for, is best and final. So until they say this is best and final, keep asking for more.
Gotcha. Have you seen anything, Dana, where you're like, this is not the best and final?
Sure.
And then from that point
There's nothing, but after the rep tells you best and final, that's all that rep can do for you.
Okay, gotcha. So we can't make another phone call or anything like that, or?
No, I mean, you can try, but all you're going to do is make them mad. So build relationships with your reps. Be nice. Okay, because sometimes reps come and go. Sometimes, here in DFW, our Aetna rep has been the same for the last 20 years. Build a relationship with your reps and be nice to them. Sometimes they have more than what they let you know, but when they tell you best and final, that's it. That's all they've got to give you.
Best and final. Gotcha. Okay. And so that's the final step. And then from that point on, we review this
every 2 years.
2 years.
Every 2 years, except with Connection GEHA, do it every 12 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then except for that exception, every 2 years, does the language change from that point on, or is it the same thing?
Same thing. So keep a spreadsheet, have your rep contact information, and make sure that you put tickers either on your calendar, find a way to remind yourself it's time to do it. Because what's going to happen is, if you've never done this before, then your dates are going to be sort of the same as far as when you're eligible for a fee schedule review. But let's say Emeritus came in and gave you an automatic increase at the beginning of 2024. You're not going to be eligible until 2026. So sometimes your dates will be all over the calendar as far as when you're eligible for a fee schedule review. That's why it's really important to stay on top of those dates and to use a calendar, use a spreadsheet, find a way. We use Trello. There's a free version of it that's great for due dates. Find a way to organize yourself so that you stay on top of it. Because again, it's part of running a business. And a lot of dentists, when they tell me they haven't negotiated for 14 years, it's sad because I'm like, man, you've missed out on some revenue opportunities there. So be consistent and run the marathon.
Gotcha. Okay. So have your most organized person do this.
Yes.
Because obviously you running the whole thing is going to be, I think you drop the ball. I mean, have you seen if a practice owner does this on their own, do they drop the ball or no?
Yeah, that's why a lot of people hire people to do it. It's just because I don't know who to talk to. I don't know what to do. But it's not rocket science. It's organization and staying on top of it. Just because you don't hear from a rep, especially if you're talking with a dentist who has, let's say they have 28 networks, organizing something like that. I mean, you have to be extremely meticulous when it comes to when was the last time I talked to this person? When do I need to send a follow-up email if I don't hear from them in 2 weeks? So just staying on top of that is, it's a job.
You do this, right? Your team?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Nice. Awesome. So then real quick, the supporting documents that made the biggest difference for this are you have to have the fee schedules or the fees on hand, you said, right?
Yep. Top 25 codes. And then, of course, your office fees in Excel. They'll always want it in Excel. You don't have both of those ready to go before you negotiate. Don't send it right away. Let them ask for it. We just don't want to send those right away because we want to keep them in our back pocket. So let's say an insurance company gives you a new fee schedule and they don't ask you for your top 25. You can send them your top 25 and say, okay, thank you so much for this. Is there anything you can do on these 25 codes? So sometimes leaving that as your next to the last step, insurance companies can be like, yeah, we could do that. Or, we have insurance companies that negotiate that with us. They're like, okay, we'll give you more on the top 25, or we'll give you less on the entire fee schedule. Well, that's a no-brainer. I'm going to get more on my top 25 because my top 25 codes are 60 to 70% of my revenue in a GP practice, even more in a specialist. So definitely there's some strategies to knowing what to send and when to send that. So don't lead with that. Keep that in your back pocket for some strategies later on after they've given you a new fee schedule, send them that.
I like that a lot. Has there been any instances where nothing has happened?
As far as not getting a response or telling you, no, we're not negotiating?
No, we're not negotiating.
Sure, a lot.
So then what do we do in that scenario?
You make a choice to stay in the network. One of the things that I see on Facebook a lot is we threatened to leave the network and then they gave us more. Well, I am not a big believer of ever threatening to leave unless we're going to leave. Don't try to bluff your way. We're going to leave. You don't get better fees. Sometimes they don't care. There's so many dentists around you. They're not going to negotiate. They'll say, bye-bye. Here's how to drop your network. And that doesn't build a really good relationship with that rep either. So I never threaten to leave unless for sure I'm going to leave if they don't. If they don't raise it, my doctor has said we're going to leave, then I will say, hey, we are considering dropping this network. I will say it if I know I'm going to drop it if you don't raise the fees. But I don't threaten. That's not a way to get anywhere. It's the negotiations. And when you say things like that, imagine somebody comes to you and say, I'm going to leave your practice if you don't make this cheaper. It doesn't work. So be nice. That's the number one rule with your reps is be nice.
It sounds, Dana, like there's a lot to do with the relationship with the rep. What are some key things that we can do to make sure they're like happy all the time?
Okay. So all of our reps across the country, we have notes on. So we try to get to know the rep a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to use a Cigna rep up here in Sherman, Texas. Okay. Denison, Texas. We have a rep up here who's wonderful, but she hates to drive on the ice. And I mean, you guys know us Texas drivers are just fabulous on the ice. Yeah. So we know she doesn't like to drive on the ice. So my team knows that when it ices in DFW area or up north, we're going to send an email to that rep. Okay. And we will email the rep, hey, it's icy today. Just thinking about you. Don't get out on the roads. We keep notes on all of our reps. Once you get to know your rep a little bit, it's just like getting to know your patients, right? You keep notes. Patient likes a blanket when they come in or whatever the rep. Get to know them and reach out to them. Other than when you're not negotiating, reach out to them and say, hey, how's it going? How are things in Cigna? We're really enjoying the fact that we have to call you with the prep date and the cementation date to get the build-up paid. Make a joke.
Mhm.
I mean, just build relationships with your reps. Really important.
Gotcha. So little by little, get to know them, ask the right questions. Because it is
Yep.
true. I guess every time you do message them, if it's only for negotiations,
Yeah,
it's transactional.
absolutely. We make it a point to send emails other than negotiations to our reps.
Gotcha. Okay. So we should do that too. So I'm listening to this episode
Mhm.
and I'm thinking, geez, I don't know any of my reps really. I barely know their first names, kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
What should I start doing now to strengthen that relationship?
Well, I would always start out with a fee schedule review and find out, like, say, hey, where are you from? Or,
Mhm.
just like you build a relationship with your patients, what questions do you ask your patients? Where are you at? Where are you located? Are you local to us? What state are you in? I'd ask, that's one of the first things we ask is where are you? Trying to figure out, do you work at the Cigna base or do you get to work from home? Just start asking questions. My first communication with my reps are always, am I eligible for a fee schedule review? I don't
Mhm.
want to ever look like I'm trying to smooth somebody before, but yeah, my first interaction is always asking for a fee schedule review.
Like business. Hey, what is happening, right? You get
Yeah.
straight to the point. I like that. Now, I'm sure you've come across difficult reps, difficult companies, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Were there any leverage points or pain points that we could kind of look into with that so that we can get what we want to get, meaning like a better fee kind of a thing?
You can't treat all your patients the same,
Mm-hmm.
right? We can't treat all our reps the same. We have some reps that just are straight to the point. Are we eligible for a fee schedule review? No, you are not at this time. Or we have closed the door on negotiations for 2025. And then my next question is, when am I eligible and when does the window open back up? And just keep it simple. So yes, there's difficult reps. There's difficult patients. I try to mirror them, like if they're answering some questions or if they're super short and I'm going to be short and to the point. You ever done DISC? The DISC personalities where they're direct or, you like to tell them they have great shoes or steady Eddie or all the details. I kind of treat them that way. They're direct, then I'm direct. They tell me, oh, I love your signature, your email signature. Oh my gosh, I love yours too. Where did you get yours? So just.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I do. I like the grateful part. I was like, oh, that's nice. It's really, really nice. Yeah. But anyway, so with this whole process, can we scale this system on our own? Do you recommend?
Absolutely. So most people, when they hire a third party to do this, it's because they lack the time and they lack the organization. They know they just can't keep up with it because they have 400 other things to do up front. I still go in my brother's practice once a week and run his practice. So I know what it takes when you're up there, and sometimes it's just too much.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people will hire it out. There are a lot of practices who do it themselves. Again, they just make it part of their job duty. Your insurance coordinators, part of your job duty is negotiating your insurance contracts. So when they make it part of the job description, just depends on the time that the people have to be able to do this.
Okay, so the time. So then when do you recommend actually, hey, it's time to get a third party or company or someone else to do this instead of your office manager? Obviously, sometimes the office manager may be dropping the ball here and there. Does it just mean you need to tighten up your system better, organize a little bit better? Or is it, hey, it's time, you need to outsource this?
I think if you're not seeing results and you're not hearing back and consistently following up, I think it's time to hire out.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a product on our website that's a DIY. We have all of the steps for you and what you do to negotiate, and we have all of the organization done for you. So it's called DIY negotiations, and you can buy that on our website. We've created that for people, just like you said, that maybe they're not organized enough, but they know that they can get this done, but they don't know how to organize themselves and stay on top of it. So we created that. And it's a really cool step-by-step guide for those do-it-yourselfers. Your do-it-yourselfer needs to be high-performing. You have to be on top of it in your heart. And I mean, if you look at yourself as far as, this is just another thing I don't have time for, hire it out. Hire it out.
Gotcha. I like that, the DIY. So we can just get the DIY course or the package, and then from that point on, we'll learn on our own.
Absolutely. Come up with your own ways. You don't need to buy the DIY. You can figure out your own organization. And it's just, like I said, just making sure you're hearing back and also not knowing who to reach out to. That's a huge deal for a lot of people. Like, who do I reach out to? Google it. Provider Relations, Cigna, Dallas, Texas. Provider Relations, Delta Dental. So Google Provider Relations and get a phone number, and you can call. I'm okay with the call at the very beginning to find out, do I have a rep? Or is it just a department that I'm reaching out to and then emailing from there? So you can Google a lot of that stuff and get some answers.
Interesting. Now, what would this look like for a startup versus an established office? Is there much of a difference?
Well, a startup has to decide what networks to join.
Mm.
I mean, if you're starting up and you're in, let's say, Cincinnati, and you're a startup there, we've got a lot of participating dentists in Cincinnati, right? So you have to decide, you know where your location is. They know your competition. So pretend you're a patient with Aetna. Go to the Aetna website and say, find a provider. Put your zip code in and find out how many Aetna dentists are around you. So if you have a lot of competition, that's something to consider as far as participating. I look at competition around the doctors that we negotiate for, because then that also helps me that if there isn't a whole lot of competition around there, that I know I can push it. I know that I can ask for more and keep asking for more. As far as startups, when we talk to a startup dentist, the first thing they always ask us is, do you do an analysis of the area? No, we don't. You know the major employers that are there. If you're an associate somewhere else, you know the major employers that are there, and you can figure out, their plans. So our strategy for a startup are 5 direct contracts and 1 or 2 umbrellas. So umbrellas are a great strategy to put a lot of insurance companies under and have great fees. So a TPA and umbrella, Connection Dental, Carrington, Dentamax, Premier, DHA, there's all kinds of different umbrella plans out there that will encompass a lot of insurance companies underneath them. You'll be in network and have higher allowables. Great strategy. But the direct contracts, the patients will find you faster. So if you have great cash flow when you're a startup, you have great cash flow, you're not worried about anything for 6 months, umbrellas are a great way to go to build that patient base with higher allowables.
Gotcha. Okay, so umbrellas, if you have great cash flow at the beginning where you're like, I can wait.
Yep.
I can wait for a little bit. But if you cannot wait, get direct.
So direct contracts and umbrellas, do both. Okay, so I'll give you guys a little bit of information. So we've got Delta, MetLife, Aetna, Guardian or United Healthcare, depending on the area, and Cigna. Those are the 5 biggies. I just named 6, but I only like 5 direct contracts. I don't want to have more than 7 or 8 fee schedules that I'm tied to, because you have an accounts receivable nightmare. Yeah. So a lot of people call and be like, oh, I have 14 fee schedules. And oh my gosh. And I'm like, okay, what do your adjustments look like? Because when you're verifying insurance, they're like, yep, you're going to use the Connection Dental fees. And you get the EOB and they paid you on Carrington. I know some people are laughing right now and probably be like, yeah, I know exactly what that looks like. So I try to limit it to 7 or 8 fee schedules at the most in a startup, because you get too many and you can create an accounts receivable nightmare.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Now, you mentioned something about making sure you do an analysis and looking at your competition. Can you give me like a basis or like a set? Hey, this is what competition looks like. This is not competition. Because sometimes we may think like, there's 2. Oh my gosh. And there's competition, right? And then there's some who's like, hey, we're in San Francisco. There's only 4. That's not that much kind of a thing. So to you, what does that look like?
That depends on where you are. So like you just said, San Francisco, and there's only 4, I would say that's not competition. Okay. We have a specialist in Nebraska. She's in the middle of nowhere. She has no competition. Her closest specialist is 50 miles away. 50. Right. So for me, I'm like, why would you go on network at all? So I think it just depends. And it does depend on the area. Dallas, Fort Worth, hugely saturated market, hugely. But it doesn't mean you can't make it fee for service. I think it just depends on what your goals are. What are your goals for participation? That's my first question when I ask dentists. What are your goals? Is it to fill chair time and I need to have cash flow right away? Or I've got great cash flow. I'm okay with being a little slower, filling the chairs. I want higher allowables. And then we're looking at umbrellas.
Gotcha. Yeah, majority, I would say, not majority, but a lot, especially startups are like, I need to open, I need to make money, I need to cover for this right now. So in that scenario, it's best to go with direct and then maybe later on drop off or?
Yeah. If you do 5 direct contracts and 2 umbrellas, okay, pick 2. And we love Connection. We love Zealous. Carrington's good to us sometimes. DHA, so different ones are good to us and give us great allowables. So what you can do is, let's say you have MetLife, Guardian. Let's use those 2 as an example, just to kind of keep it simple. We are setting dentists up to be able to drop those direct contracts, but they're going to fall underneath these umbrellas with higher allowables eventually. So when that happens, you're prepping your patients a year before you're going to do it, and you're still telling them, I'm still in network. Our relationship is just changing from directly with MetLife to our relationship with Connection Dental. but you're still going to be in network here in our practice. And tell them over and over again, when you get that letter, you're still in network.
Mm-hmm.
So prepping your patients for something like that's really important because MetLife's going to send a letter and they need to know that you're still in network through an umbrella plan. Side note, MetLife has 2 different levels. We have a PDP level and a PDP plus level. Just to let you guys know out there, don't say Dana said MetLife's going to fall under connection, because MetLife PDP plus plans will fall under connection. Your PDP plans will be out of network. I wanted to put that out there in case somebody says, well, Dana said it was all going to fall under there. It's not necessarily going to be true. And that's with any insurance company underneath those plans.
Yeah, PDP plus though.
Yep, PDP plus.
Will fall. Interesting. That's more work, obviously, right? To let the patient know this. Do you have a specific script for that to let the patient know, or you just let them know, like, hey, don't worry, we're going to let you know every time?
One of the things when we're training a team that's going to go out of network, I think the biggest fear of the patient is, what does that mean to me?
Yes.
Sometimes they don't even know what that means. Do you know what it means? If you're choosing to go out of network with a plan, I always ask, do you know what that means to the patient? So they have no idea what it means. Well, most of the time, your preventive services, you're not going to see a difference. You're going to see a little difference on the dentistry that we do here. You'll see a different, we're going to see an increase in fees. But we promise that you won't leave here. We won't do anything until you know how much something is going to cost. Mm-hmm. No surprises here in our practice. So you will always know what something's going to cost you. Letting them know that you're going to let them know how much something's going to cost, so that they're not just guessing what, you give them an estimate and they say it's 80% when darn right it's not going to be 80%. Letting the patient know that you're going to let them know how much something costs. Don't be, no surprises here. There won't be any surprises here in our practice. That's one of the things that I tell them. So do you know what it means? And there'll be no surprises here in our practice for you.
Gotcha. Okay, I like that. So then, what not to do, Dana? What are the most common pitfalls dentists fall into when trying to negotiate PPO reimbursements?
Getting angry with your rep. They're just the messenger. They're told what they can do. They'll say, they're allowed allotments in certain areas, depending on the rep's area. They have certain things that they can't do. Just don't get mad at your reps. They're the messenger, and you're trying to help them see your way, and then not being consistent.
Yeah, just like in general, like everything. Yeah, not being consistent is huge. So, Dana, you've been doing this for, if you don't mind me asking, for how many years?
21.
21 years. Within 21 years, throughout this process, what would you never do again?
Oh my gosh. That's so hard, because even the things that I've messed up on, I learned from. Probably not making assumptions about practices, knowledge of insurance. So assuming that when a dentist calls and say they haven't negotiated for 14 years, their assumption is they can get 14 years. They can get 14 years of results, and that's not going to happen. Sometimes in the back years ago, I would assume that they just knew that. I probably made some assumptions that, looking back, I probably would just ask more questions of the practice. Ask more questions.
I like that. Questions such as what?
So I used to never ask what the dentist goals were for participation. Right. So I would be like, okay, so you want to participate. Okay, let's come up with a strategy. Then what would happen is that maybe I put them in too many networks, or maybe they wanted to be put in too many, but didn't need to be put into that many. So asking them what their goals are for participation, what were they trying to accomplish? And most of the time it's filling the chair as quickly as possible, or I want higher allowables. And if they want both, I have to really grab their feet and put it on the ground. They want the best of both worlds. And there's dentists out there who use TPAs as their only strategy. That's how they participate. And that works too. I love the strategy, as long as you've got the cash flow. But like you said, most doctors need to start making money right out of the gate.
No, 100%. Yeah. So then what's a realistic expectation for most practices if they follow like your approach, what you said, when it comes to, okay, let's be consistent every 2 years. I think one was 12 months. So 1 year.
Yep.
And then from that point on, we review it. We keep the 25 codes in the back pocket, kind of a thing, until we follow up with them. Listening to this, what's a realistic expectation for most practices if they follow this approach?
2 to 6% every 2 years.
Really? That compounds.
Yeah. That's why you need to do it every 2 years. Some of these doctors that I've worked with for years have some great allowables because of this. And then there are times, we've been negotiating, we're 10 years in, we're on our second round of negotiation. They'll be like, they're at the highest fee schedule we've got. And that happens. And then you have a decision to make. Can I still afford to stay in this network? figuring out what it costs you to do procedures, don't skip that step. A lot of doctors don't even know what it costs them to do procedures. So know what it costs you to do the procedures.
Nice. Okay. All righty, Dana. Any final pieces of advice that you'd like to give to our audience?
Sure. Be consistent. Most organized person doing it, and be nice.
Be nice. I like that. Awesome, Dana. Thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure. But before we say goodbye, can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Sure. Our website is PPOdentalconsulting.com, and all of our services are on there. The DIY is on there. Take a look at it. If you have any questions, you can email me, and I'll help you. I'll walk you through how to do this. So I have no problem. Just even helping. I do it all the time. If I get an email and people are like, hey, how do I do this? Email me at dana@PPOdentalconsulting.com, and I'll tell you what to do.
Nice. Dana, you are the best. Thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.